this is worth your time. This is the time to worship our Lord Jesus Christ, to be together in fellowship and friendship, to learn, to study, and see what God has given to us through His Word. It's a great day to be alive. I'm a happy guy, as you can tell. And you know, when I was 22 years old, I was even happier. I graduated from college. I had my first job. Now, I was so badly paid that my mother had found for me a job as a maintenance man at a convent. So in exchange for cutting the grass, I got to live for free. But I was still in New York. And I was in Manhattan, and I was working on at the Commodities Exchange as a clerk for one of the great trading houses in Manhattan. And oh, God was in heaven. Reagan was in the White House. All was right in the world. I was 22 years old. It couldn't get better than this. Do you remember the 80s? Oh, I can remember buying my uniform for work. Now, I actually had a uniform. I had to wear this sort of light blue jacket over my clothing with the name of the firm, and I had a little badge. Not that uniform. I mean my uniform. Wingtip shoes. Shirts with cufflinks, and the collar a different color than the shirt. Suspenders. Now I have to wear suspenders because I'm a fat old man and my pants fall out. But when I was 22 years old, I had suspenders just to have suspenders. And I learned the most important part of my job as a new young broker's assistant on Wall Street was to be able to move a cigar from one side of your mouth to the other without using your hands. God was in heaven, and it was a wonderful time to be young. This was before the first crash that has been around since I've been around. And there was a particular movie that came out, didn't come out that year, but a few years later, called Wall Street. And Wall Street had a character named Gordon Gekko. I've given this sermon a few times, and some person who I shall remain nameless said, "You're using all these names. I don't know who these people are." So I've got a cheat sheet for you for this service. And on the back, you can see a picture of Gordon Gekko and what I hope to be. I even brushed my hair. I used Brill cream to grease my hair. Oh man, I looked like Troy Donahue because it was still blonde then and greased straight back. I was beautiful. Well, at least I thought my wife thought so. And Gordon Gekko was in this movie called Wall Street. He's a fictional character, movie by Oliver Stone. And Gordon Gekko has a scene, and you can read this. One of his words are, and he has a meeting of an old stodgy corporation, one of these old line manufacturing firms that employ people and turn out a decent product and pay these people a decent wage. But Gordon Gekko sees value in tearing this thing down. And here's his little speech to the shareholders. The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures the essence of the evolutionary spirit. Greed in all its forms, greed for life, for money, for love, knowledge, has marked the upward surge of mankind. We may snicker at that, but folks, you don't know how many people believe that to this day. That greed is good. That this whole point of being yourself is to build as big a plow as you can get. Greed is neither good nor bad. It's not a virtue. It's not a sin. It's just the way our system works, according to this world. But unfortunately, it's not how the world works according to the gospel of Jesus Christ. In our gospel reading tonight, this morning, Deacon Linda read the words, "Take up your cross and follow me." Now, those are words that if you're a Christian of any length of time, you've heard innumerable times, but it probably doesn't mean anything to you anymore. And I want to talk about theme of taking up your cross and following me. Because what is being said here is the center, the core of Christian living through Jesus Christ. Now our gospel reading in verse 34 starts out by saying, and I'll flip over the page and read it. He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, now let's put this into context. The first thing Jesus is doing is he's saying, this is not for you disciples, this is not in secret. This is for everybody who's going to call themselves a Christian. This is universal. It's not optional. It's not, for only the priests of the holy rollers or holy joes. It's for everybody. Jesus said, if any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Now, the Greek word here, life, and the editors, when they put together the King James Bible, there were two word plays here going on in the Greek. The first is the repetition. Gain, lose, win, lose, life. But the word life is not like life in other parts of the Bible. It could also be translated as yourself, because there's a repetition of themselves, yourselves. And what the gospel is really saying, to find yourself, you've got to lose yourself. Not so much your life, meaning death, not so much your soul, but your persona. To find who you truly are as a human being, you've got to let go and lose that. Now, what does that mean? Now, let me just take a little bit of a sidestep. Gordon Gekko is not the figment of Oliver Stone's imagination. I met and saw and wanted to be like people like that when I was in my early 20s. I saw them in the executive suites of the firm that I worked for. Those people are still around. And there's a whole tradition, intellectual tradition in our culture that puts the self in that sense of greed is good, what's in it for me? The way our world works, folks, is that if you're not going to toot your own horn, if you don't toot your own horn, no one else is going to do it. If you don't look out for number one, no one else is going to do it. You have got to win and struggle and fight, and you have to succeed, because otherwise you're a failure and your life's meaningless. This way of looking at the world was very popular when I was in high school. Did anybody have to read Ayn Rand? Oh, terrible headaches. And I still have no clue how to pronounce her first name. I never met the woman. Ayn? Okay. I'll take it on trust. I never met her. Not only is her book's a pill, but her first name is terrible too. Rand had a philosophy called objectivism. That the aim of life was to be selfish, and that selfishness was a virtue because by your being selfish, you built up yourself, because the world otherwise was going to fall apart if you didn't do it. And a lot of the Gordon Gekko mindset comes from these kids reading Ayn Rand in high school, of wanting to be like the master builder, the man in charge of the world, the Superman. In the 80s, that word phrase was master of the universe. You wanted to be the master of the universe. You wanted to be at the center of everything. And by your work, by your skill, by your brains, by your ability, you could make things happen. Well, Rand didn't just emerge one day. She drew upon deeper resources. And that was a German philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche was the son of a Lutheran pastor and had 2 Lutheran pastors as grandfathers. And like most priest kids, he turned out rotten. Nietzsche totally rejected Christianity, and he rejected Christianity in a way that when I was in college and when I was 21 or 22 years old made perfect sense to me. Christianity was for weaklings. Christianity, I didn't want to be like the Christian kids. Man, they were weird. They were weak. They were the needy people. I was going to go places. I had the strength, the brains, the power. I didn't need anybody. I certainly didn't need a sky fairy to look out for me. And Nietzsche had a way of looking at a world which said that he postulated the theory of the Übermensch, the Superman. And that the Christian God taught you not to be a Superman. And in fact, the Christian God didn't want you to be successful. And for Nietzsche, that was the opposite of the way the world worked. And Nietzsche sought to overthrow the Christian worldview. And Nietzsche was extremely influential. Remember, this is coming around at the same time as Darwinism, survival of the fittest. This is coming around the time of imperialism, where white races have a duty to civilize the black and the yellow and the brown races. Or later, the Germans, the Aryans, have a responsibility for purifying the blood of Europe from the non-Aryan people. Now, Nietzsche died 30 years before Hitler took power, but Hitler put his finger exactly on this theme. And it's the same theme that you have in Ayn Rand, that the Superman, the man or woman endowed by nature and providence, whatever they were, but they're there to seize the day. That is how you identify yourself. In the past 50, 100 years, as this strain of thought has been rising and generating and still percolates, we get static and mild versions of this on public television. Anybody ever get a tote bag or a series of books from Deepak Chopra?
Yeah.
Or Tony Robbins? Every day and in every way, I'm getting better and better. I can walk on fire. I can conquer my demons. I can do all this. It's a mild form of the Superman. No gas chambers there. But it's still coming from the same well. As this has been coming along, we've had the lure of Eastern mysticism. You remember the Beatles? Some of you may remember the Beatles. You would not have been born, Sandy. So you know, went off to India with, I forget his name. George, I remember George Harrison. No, what's the name of the Swami, right? Folks, you can take your pick. Went off to find inner enlightenment and peace. And I remember as a teenage boy reading these books, Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse, and all these little novels. And the idea of Buddhism was so attractive when I was miserable. Because Buddhism said that the whole life is purposeless, it's meaningless, and what you seek to aspire to is nirvana. And the little illustration is the Nirvana Buddha. If you ever go on a tour of the East or the Orient, you'll see different Buddhas. There's a happy, smiling Buddha. This sounds like Chinese restaurants, but I don't mean it to be. There's the happy Buddha, the contented Buddha, the contemplative Buddha, and then there's the reclining Buddha who lies on his right side, signifying that he has found nirvana, meaning that his personality, his whole self, has been wiped away. The purpose, the ultimate aim of a Buddhist is not to be yourself, but to lose yourself. It's like, as the Buddha said, like a raindrop falling into an ocean. You become one with the infinite and beyond. So our culture, our century is going in two directions. Total nothingness total selfishness. And against this stands the voice of Jesus Christ. And this voice says, to find yourself, you must lose yourself. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't mean lose yourself in a Buddhist sense of becoming nothing. Nor does it mean to find yourself so that you can be, you're like, this is not a church in Houston, Texas, folks, where I'll tell you, if you give me $1,000, God's going to reward you tenfold. Well, I'd love to do that, and I'll skip out of town in a few weeks. But we don't do the prosperity gospel here. What Christ tells us was summarized in a poem by John Donne. Now, who is John Donne? John Donne was a writer, he was a politician, he was a clergyman, and he was Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. And at the very end of his career, beautiful career, he was a high flyer in the church. A typhus epidemic swept through London, and it killed his 18-year-old daughter, Lucy. And he sickened almost to the point of death. But he didn't die. And he began a long walk back into recovery. And during his recovery, he wrote this poem, which I printed on your little flyer. And it has an awful title, Meditation 17. It sounds like something you buy in the liquor store, I don't know. But you all know the first line. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as any manner of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. What John Donne is telling us right now, that the Christian life is a life led in relationship. First with God, and then with everybody around you. Your responsibility is not first to yourself, because you are diminished by the death of anybody. You're at a clod, which is not an idiot, but a little piece of dirt. If a little piece of dirt slips off the shore of England and washes away to the sea, England is less for it. And what Donne is trying to say that to us is that by being a Christian, you live not for your own glory, not for your own self, but to worship and love God and do what God commanded us to do, which is love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. Now, many of us want to tack on a third commandment, which is, and love me best of all. But no, the Christian is called to love and to serve, and in doing that, he's going to discover who his true self is. That's the conundrum, if you will. You've got to give away your pride, your ego, your rights, your desires, in order to get them back in right relationship and way. Now, each of us have a different cross to bear. Each different times of our life, we'll have different crosses to bear. Right now, my cross is my parents. They are not well. My father and mother refused to leave their home, refused to go into assisted living. They really should be in a nursing home, forget assisted living. Yet, I, as his good son, must continue to love and support and be there for them. Now, the Gordon Gekko mindset would say, oh, hell with them. I mean, in fact, the sooner they die, the better I can spend their inheritance. The Gordon Gekko mindset is, let me just warehouse mom and dad somewhere, and a phone call every other week will just do fine. But that is not what we're called to do. We're called to love and serve. And the funny thing is, and that my father, who has lost all power and the charisma and the brain and the brawn that he had. A powerful, bright, energetic man. As I have been working with him, bathing him, I have found in him, I see the face of God. Because I'm seeing in him the love of the Lord who gave his life for me. I'm seeing that weakness, that brokenness in my Father, and it's coming back to me as the power of our risen Lord Jesus Christ. Each of you have a cross to bear. Some of us have spouses that are going down the road of Alzheimer's dementia or other dementias. And I'm so proud of the people that I know in this church who are being faithful to the end, who are loving, who are supporting, who are there. It is no fun to go to a nursing home. They smell, they're hot, they're boring, and you're with somebody whose body is there, but they're not there. Yet they are faithful to the end. Because that is the cross that God has given them to bear. That is the suffering that they're bearing. And by bearing that suffering, they will become closer to Christ. Because in that suffering, they will find meaning and power. I have been there. I know what I'm talking about, and it's been that way for me. We are called as Christians to those unfashionable words of honor and duty and integrity and courage. Not what's in it for me. We are called to lose ourselves so that we may find ourselves. This is what it means. It doesn't translate easily, and I know this is a hard topic to discuss. I'd rather talk about give me $10,000 and God will give you $100,000. But we need to be real about what God expects of us in this world. That's faithfulness in relationship, perseverance in life. Doesn't mean we're doormats. Now, what I'm not talking about is my mother-in-law is the type of person, and she said, oh, you kids go out to the movies, I'll just stay home and wax the floor. You know, we're not talking about that sort of, that's masochism, I'm afraid. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about love that expects nothing in return when it's given, but the joy is getting it back tenfold. God doesn't work like a slot machine where you pay in so much money into the plate, you're going to get so much out. But when you do that with love, it happens every time. The love that you give to others, to the lost, to the suffering, to the poor, to the meek, people who don't deserve it, who are not related to you, who are a different color, a different religion, different race, those people whom you love, God returns that love in your heart and your life tenfold. And I speak as one who has been down that road. Friends, don't be a Nietzsche. Don't be a Randian. Don't buy the tote bags and the books and the videotapes. Put your heart and your trust in Jesus Christ. For only He will allow you to become who you truly are. Amen. Amen. Friends, would you please stand and join me in saying,